Hi, and welcome back. I'll start with a brief relationship update. He came back into town after a few days communing with nature. While he was gone, he took his journal with him and he took his workbook with him and did a lot of journaling and a lot of activities and exercises where he spent a lot of time in reflection about what he wants in his life and how to move his life forward. Led to a lot of great conversation yesterday afternoon and last night, and I am just phenomenally proud of the work that he is doing for himself. It just makes me happy to see him getting into a happier place. On top of the work I'm doing for myself, it's laying a really good groundwork for what we're hoping to accomplish together. So super, super proud of him. Just like beaming, smiling ear to ear, really, really proud. Makes me very happy to see him moving towards a better spot. So today, what I'm struggling with personally is imposter syndrome. Some friends have been giving me some daily encouragement and feedback about these videos, and it's been really positive. But since I don't do YouTube or social media for a living, I'm not a content creator, I have no idea what I'm doing, I question all the praise I'm getting. And I've been having more good talks with him about myself, about his journey, about our journey together, about us, which leads to more questions, which can make me feel a bit worse at times. I'll circle back to that in a bit, but for sure that's part of my experience right now and why imposter syndrome is on my mind today. So let's start with the definition, except there really isn't a great definition. Not a clinical one I would normally turn to in my typical need for fully understanding something, because imposter syndrome is not an actual diagnosable clinical condition. One definition I found from a way back 1993 journal article, which gives us some sense of how long people have been thinking about this, called it an experience of feeling incompetent and having deceived others about one's abilities. These individuals tend to attribute any successes not to their actual abilities, but to external circumstances or qualities unrelated to actual talent, like personal charm, or an ability to read and meet other people's expectations, or other people having low expectations to begin with, or luck, and on and on. Imposter feelings have been shown to be associated with characteristics like introversion, worry and fear, a need to look smart to others, a tendency towards personal shame, and conflictual and non-supportive family backgrounds. And like I said, this is not a new thing. Research on this has gone back to at least the 70s and probably before, when it might have been called something else. So all that's a lot to unpack. And I can already see how this relates to me even before I take a deeper dive with this worksheet, which has a very simplified, non-clinical explanation that I really like. Long-lasting feelings of unworthiness that don't match up with facts or others' perceptions. That's a lot easier to digest. This is a really great worksheet, and it's really helping me think through part of this process. So if I turn to this, there are certain traits of people who are experiencing imposter syndrome. Having unrealistically high standards, dreading being found out as a fraud, hiding deficits rather than addressing them, consistently feeling out of place or unworthy, dwelling on negative feedback while ignoring praise and achievements, plus the ones I mentioned before about being prone to feelings of shame, anxiety and fear, need to look smart or accomplished, and often coming from a background that wasn't particularly supportive. There are some risk factors that make somebody more likely to suffer from imposter syndrome, like being in a toxic or hostile environment, being the first in your family to take on a specific role, having an achievement-oriented childhood, perfectionistic tendencies, experiencing discrimination and bias, low self-esteem or self-defeating thoughts, defining success based on a job role, and a high need for external validation. For me, most of those are true. I have worked in hostile or toxic work environments in the past for many, many years of my adult life. I won't say my family environment was toxic or hostile, but my family was not always really supportive of some of the goals that I have had. I was the first in my family to take on a specific role. I was the first in my immediate family, or what we used to call nuclear family, parents and siblings, to graduate college. I was the first to get graduate education. I was the first to work in a professional skilled trade. What a lot of people think of as like going to work in a suit and a tie, although I clearly do not work in a suit and a tie. My family was kind of achievement oriented, but in a slightly different way. My parents were never overly concerned about grades, but they were really, really invested in raising smart children. They wanted children who were intelligent and understood the way the world works and who were able to engage in some kind of discourse. So books were always present. Educational movies and experiences were always a big part of that achievement. And because of that, I did develop some perfectionistic tendencies. If you ask the people that work for me, I can be a wee bit picky about things that probably don't matter that much, all the way down to very specific formatting on documents that I can pick out just by looking at it that I'm probably the only one who sees it. I have experienced some discrimination or bias. I mean, I've talked before about being a queer kid in the South. Don't think I have to dive too deep into that one. And with all of those things, I have had low self-esteem. I have defined success based on a job role. My parents never pushed certain career goals on us. They always said they wanted us to be happy in the work that we did, as long as the work that we did was in some way fulfilling. But I think secretly my dad kind of always wanted all of us kids to have some kind of a trade, something, kind of hands-on work that would never go away. Plumber, mechanic, electrician. And for my sister, even though we're not Catholic, of course, a nun who never marries and lives a life of chastity. None of us turned out to be any of those things. I was very focused on getting some kind of an office type or professional type job that dropped me into six-figure income. That was really important to me. So I have defined a lot of my personal success based on my job role and my ability to meet that goal that I had that honestly wasn't supported by my parents early on. And to this day, I'm still not sure they're really that thrilled with the kind of work that I do. The one where I kind of differ, the trait that doesn't really apply to me, is I don't really have a high need for external validation. In fact, external validation makes me phenomenally uncomfortable, in part because I think it makes me feel more like an imposter. So I'm more about internal validation, yet I recognize we all need external validation to give us some context and some support. So for me, most of those traits are true. They manifest in my work, they manifest in my relationship, and my family dynamics, and my friendships. There are two great examples on this worksheet that pretty much sum up my experience with work and love. Example at work, Keith just started a new job. Everyone was impressed by his application, but Keith agonizes over whether he can meet their expectations. He berates himself for any mistakes, real or perceived, discounting anything he does well. He's terrified he'll be exposed as an incompetent fraud. Boom. That is my professional fear. I have gone to school. I've got multiple degrees. I have a license. I supervise other people. I have a national board certification. And yet I still worry so much of the time that I'm not good at what I do. I'm not competent at what I do. I'm not capable at what I do. And I don't have facts that back that up. My business grows year after year after year. There is more business coming in. There's more money coming in. We don't really advertise, so it's word of mouth referral. So clearly other people's perception of me is much higher than my own. For me right now, I still have lingering questions about my professional ability. If I am such a mental health professional or even a subject matter expert, why am I struggling so much with depression and anxiety? How am I not exempt or immune from this? If I am such an expert on human behavior and helping people live their healthiest and happiest lives, why are we living apart right now? Why are we separated? Why did our relationship get to this point? I know it's a distorted thought process lingering in my brain that these things wouldn't be happening if I wasn't an actual imposter. I know that's not real. I get it, but the thoughts linger anyway. In the relationship example, after several unsatisfying relationships, Roberta found someone who feels like a perfect fit, but she's plagued by feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness. Roberta goes out of her way to hide her imperfections. She's convinced her partner will one day discover her flaws and leave her. Okay, wow, that is exactly what has happened to me in this relationship. In prior relationships, they didn't really feel like great fits, so I wasn't overly concerned about flaws. This one, from day one, felt like this amazing fit, like something in the universe brought us together and it was destined to be. Silly as that sounds, that's kind of how it felt. And I have been terribly fearful of being completely open and completely vulnerable, for fear that things that aren't perfect or would be considered imperfect or would be considered flaws. And rationally, I know nobody's perfect and no relationship is perfect, but my mind went there a lot. So I hid a lot. And one of the things that he wanted was for me to not hide things, for me to be completely open and honest about everything. And I didn't do that because I was afraid he wouldn't be able to accept areas where I was not perfect. Wow. Within friendships, it's quite similar. I think my friends will recognize I'm not a nice enough or good enough person. I worry that I'm not supportive enough for them to want to be around me or value me. I worry that I'm not giving them the right kind of support, and eventually they'll just move on. That has not happened in my limited circle. I've always preferred a smaller circle of closer relationships over a large group of less familiar people. It's just part of the way my brain likes to deep dive into things, including relationships. And they've been meaningful. Nobody has walked away because I'm a bad friend. Nobody's ever told me I'm a bad friend. Even when I've had disagreements with friends, they've been things that we have easily worked through. But those distorted thoughts linger anyway. To be clear, I don't have fears of abandonment. I'm not engaging in frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. My worries really are because I feel like an imposter and unworthy of so much of the good that has been a part of my life. And the consequences for that, like on this worksheet, missed opportunities, low self-esteem, loss of confidence, depression, reduced productivity, burnout, social isolation, anxiety. I have experienced all of that. It's making me crazy. And it makes my boyfriend crazy. And it makes my friends crazy, and it makes my family crazy. But most of all, it doesn't serve me. It is not giving value to my life. So how am I going to address it? Honestly, I have no fucking idea how to do this for myself. I am keenly aware that even though imposter syndrome isn't a diagnosable condition, it is a set of symptoms tied to depression and anxiety. That's what's happening with me right now. Real life can sometimes advance imposter syndrome through distorted interpretations and distorted thinking about actual events. Like those thoughts I was having about work and relationships. Things that are based in reality, but aren't actual real. At least not the way I'm interpreting them. And then those thought processes make me feel more like an imposter. And it goes on and on and on in this vicious circle. That's a hard cycle to break. So I'm doing more worksheets and more explorations and more activities about my good qualities and traits. I am painfully listing out accomplishments, which was not an easy thing. I actually had to turn to my CV to fill in some blanks because it's just so easy for me to overlook things. I'm listing out all of the good things that I have in my life, some small, some big, but taking this inventory of all the good that is happening in my life. I'm drawing links between these things and what I did to get there. But it's hard because my brain wants to discount all of that. I can come up with all kinds of reasons why things happen well for me that have nothing to do with me. And even when people reassure me and gently, or sometimes not so gently, remind me of what's good about me, it's hard for me to accept that. Knowing what I know about myself and what I know about this process that I'm going through right now, and learning what I've learned so far through both training and experience, if I don't challenge these distorted thoughts, I am going to move into the zone of self-sabotage. I'm working way too fucking hard to stay in a place of self-sabotage. But that's my truth right now. And destigmatizing this process means being honest with myself even when I don't like it, and even when I don't know exactly what to do with it, other than just keeping on, other than giving it space to just be. So that's where I'm at today. I'll be back tomorrow.